That's Vicky's
So
husband.
it's a
I don't know.
bathroom block. No, I've never met. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
There's two of those for people.
that's the old crew. Is Dave with his daughter. Yeah. I mean, it's a stunning place. There's me and Dee Dee in the lobby. Yeah.
Okay, so there.
Huh? Just absolutely stunning.
Yeah. Nice. That's such a pretty picture. It's really nice one.
Thank you. She's very sweet. My wife makes that really well.
And he knows all the right things to say. All right, is everybody ready? Sorry, I was a little bit late. Okay, so we're gonna call a meeting to order at 7:02. We'll start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I start with the motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda?
Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. Needing a motion to approve the open session minutes from November 28th, 2016.
Make a motion to approve the open session minutes of November 20th, 2016.
Second. Any discussion or any issues with the minutes? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes. I'm gonna go right along to student comments.
So tomorrow night, December 20th, there will be a STEM and Humanities Scholars Meeting, which I am actually attending. The guest speaker will be Lisa McNana, Northeast Regional Manager, Community and Educational Affairs at FDIM, Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. The topic is how current business trends are impacting careers. Rapidly changing business trends have a direct effect on career and job opportunities, and collaboration is a key component for today's most successful companies. These visionary companies are hiring people who understand the connection between creative and bottom line thinking. Ms. McNana will explore ways Nipmuc scholars can maximize their potential by increasing and marketing the collaborative skills. On January 4th in the Nipmuc Auditorium, Nipmuc Athletics is proud to host Prospective College Athletic Night, which is a town meeting panel to discuss the ins and outs of being a college athlete. Topics will include the recruiting process, life as a college athlete, and being a parent of a college athlete. There will be administrators, coaches, and athletes representing the following schools: Assumption College, Boston College, Springfield College, Wheaton College, Williams College, and MIT. This is a can't miss night for any parent and student athlete considering playing at the next level. On January 5th will be the 3rd annual Alumni Fair. Alumni will be available from 2 to 4 p.m. in the Nipmuc Auditorium for current STEM and humanities scholars. Alumni will present valuable career insight. They will also serve as panelists for questions and answers from scholars.
Interesting.
Thank you. All right, moving right along to community comments. Anybody have anything to say? Okay.
Okay.
Superintendent.
All right, well, good evening. Just as an FYI, I just put out there, I underscored it in background notes. Once again, the district will be hosting kindergarten informational nights. And what they typically do is they do one at Clough, one at Memorial for our prospective kindergarten parents for next year. As I said, the one at Memorial will be Tuesday, the 10th of January. And then at Clough, Tuesday, January 24th, both of them at 6 p.m. And then as we've done over the last several years, but we've had our parents take some very strong ownership. We're doing a special session for Spanish immersion parents. That one's going to be Thursday, the 19th of January at Clough this year at 6:30. And that has quite a bit as far as students at different levels and kind of getting a sense of the expectations and the culture of the program. So from that point forward, we go forward with the kindergarten registration program. We've moved it up a little bit. You know, typically it's been towards the end of January or February. We've moved these presentations intentionally up based upon feedback that parents wanted an earlier start. So we'll be moving forward through March with the kindergarten registration process. Second piece I just wanted to bring to your attention, and it's part of our district's action plans for this year. We're beginning the process of changing our mass calling and email system from Blackboard Connect to a new product called ParentLink, which actually was bought out by Blackboard Connect. So you should have noticed, you'll start to see more emails that look like this, that are a little more concise, less of the attachments, more functionality. If you're familiar with creating websites or HTML, they're created using HTML, pretty user-friendly. Look at those good-looking people attached to that email. What we will be doing over time, one of the things that our action plans have in direct response from feedback that we got from parents, particularly with the K-12 Insight, was less emails. So this will actually have the capacity to tag emails by topic. So you will be able to opt in or opt out. So for example, if you have a child that has absolutely no interest in sports whatsoever, you could opt out for an email that's tagged athletics. Say you have a child that's totally into STEM studies and I want to receive all the STEM emails I can get, you could opt in for a STEM tag. So it'll have a certain degree of greater functionality. The ParentLink program also has a texting capacity. So we've also sent out a quick text, again, about the Golden Apple Award. We're looking to make that operational for just quick text reminders for things like events, for concerts, and so on. Because part of the feedback that we got is, gee, wouldn't it be great if we could get the information via text as well? You should notice, like you do for all the wonderful emails that you probably get, for your personal account, there is at the bottom an unsubscribe feature, so you could do that, and also with the texting feature as well. So we just had the training about a week and a half ago, and you will start to see our various schools transitioning from Blackboard Connect to this new ParentLink program.
So it hasn't started yet?
It started at the district level, but we're going to start rolling it out at the individual schools. Okay?
So just from a technologically challenged standpoint.
Okay.
So you said you could sign up for texting, and you could also opt in or opt out of any subcategory?
You will receive a text. You will receive a text. You're automatically opted in. But if you receive a text also embedded within the text message, almost I now get a reminder from my dentist. And attached to the bottom of the text, it'll say something to the effect of press C to stop or S to stop and so on. So you'll be able to do it with that as well.
Okay, how about for opting out of a category?
Okay, so we haven't started the tagging feature yet,
Okay.
but when we do operationalize the tagging feature, we will send out an email which details the various tags that you will be able to opt into or opt out of.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Just as a quick update, very, very short, but I thought there was a couple of interesting pieces here. We're getting more and more information about the next generation MCAS if you recall, they're mandating grades 4 and grades 8 to be taken online by all districts. And some districts are in great shape, other districts are scrambling for sufficient technology. I thought this was an interesting slide because it shows that it's almost a 50-50 split, in this case 40-41, as far as half of the districts are saying, look, we're just going to do the bare minimum. We're doing grades 4 and 8. And then another half of the districts are doing it, they're all in. Grades 3 through 8, they're doing online. We fall in that 19% in the sense that our third graders this year are doing paper-based testing, and grades 4 through 8, and the entire middle school will be doing it online. So kind of interesting where that is falling out. I do think it's interesting they're changing the categories. So for many, many years, we've had advanced, proficient, needs improvement, and it's known as warning at the elementary and middle school, or failing at the high school. The 4 categories right now that they're settling on are exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, partially meeting expectations, and not yet meeting expectations. So that's very much, if you're familiar with the PARCC tests, very strongly influenced by that. Just so you know, the MCAS that the 10th graders are taking will stay in place through 2019, and it will also stay in place as a paper-based test at least through 2019. We're looking forward to, and I think I mentioned this at a previous meeting, right after the holidays, they are putting together practice tests and release items online for kids. I think a concern, and it's being echoed by many superintendents across the state, if you look at the past couple of years of PARCC administration, there is a statistically significant difference in the results of the paper-based testing versus the computer-based testing. And our concern is particularly with the younger students, that part of that change in kids in paper-based testing did better. Part of it is getting used to taking tests in an online environment, using some of the manipulatives, the drag and drop tools, and so on. So we're going to do our absolute best, and we are doing our absolute best to make sure that our kids are familiar with the different online tools that are being utilized, and they do have sufficient practice. I'll probably bring back either in January or February just to give you a snapshot of some of the tools. And I think for at least the feedback that I've gotten have been some of the bigger concerns are with the math, as far as different manipulatives, online manipulatives, and so on. Okay?
Can I just ask a quick
Absolutely.
question? So you said that affects, going from paper to computer, affects the younger kids. Was there a trend in terms of MCAS versus PARCC questions, like in terms of, like, for example, when we got our MCAS results for our students, you could see the, 5 practice questions that they took or whatever it was. And I noticed a trend between what my students got on MCAS versus how well they did on those PARCC-like questions. Did you notice a trend throughout the whole school, through the district, in terms of did we do better on MCAS versus those PARCC-like questions?
Oh, it wasn't even close. We did better on the MCAS questions than we did on
Do
the
you
PARCC questions.
attribute that to computer skills?
No, because realize everything that we did last year was strictly paper-based.
Yeah.
I think it's I don't think it's going to be a stretch to see when MCAS 2.0 results. I mean, they're going to have to determine cut scores for the state and so on. But they are, I think it's going to be a significantly more challenging test than what we're used to than with the legacy MCAS. I mean, do you have anything to add? I mean,
No, I would agree. I think it's just gonna take some years for students for everything to catch up, so a lot of our materials are catching up. And then once we switch over to using more, digital assessments, then we'll kind of catch up with that. So I think I think that'll be across the board in Massachusetts too, with that exam.
So it's just kind of a learning curve.
I think so, yeah.
A whole debate, and this could be a whole school committee meeting in itself, a whole debate is going on now about resetting the district, the state's accountability system for districts and for schools. You know now how we categorize schools by level 1 through level 5. Well, it's wonderful that they're saying, okay, for the 2017 accountability ratings, we're going to, the term that they're using is hold you harmless. So it means right now, Clough, Memorial, and the high school, the worst they will do next year is level 1. The worst MISCO will do is level 2. But what about after that? And realize the state accountability system looks at 4 years worth of data, looks at your last 4 years. So you've got a lot of superintendents are saying, okay, in 4 years, you conceivably might have a mishmash of testing where a district might have gone, okay, MCAS, Park, now MCAS 2. Is that necessarily fair? Or how do you compare the Park on paper districts with the Park computer districts and so on? So they've got a lot of things that they need to wrestle with in taking it to the next step. But realize they have to have a plan in place to the U.S. Department of Education for the purposes of ESSA by the first week of April. So a lot of decisions are going to have to be made in short order, but I'll keep you apprised of that.
So a quick question, how are you going to logistically handle the 4th grade CB computer-based?
Great question. So what we're planning on doing is we've got in each elementary school somewhere in the ballpark of about 75 to 80 students in this year's grade 4. We have a computer lab in each school of about 30 students. And as I said in the background notes, we are looking at pursuing a local grant opportunity to purchase a laptop cart with 30 laptops for each school. So that, in creatively scheduling, even though this test will have unlimited time, I think we could probably creatively schedule each of, splitting the 4th grade in halves and figure it out logistically during the testing window. And realize it's a fairly flexible testing window of about 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
I think it's closer to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so they've drafted so far a couple various type of schedules that they can use of, rotating, maybe session 1 for a couple grades in a couple days, then session 2. We tend to try to avoid, certain days closer to holidays, et cetera. So there are a couple drafts that we've been working on the last week. Not easy, but they're getting it done, so we'll do it.
And we upgraded our bandwidth and all of that. So
Yes,
we
that
have
was
the
done
capacity
over the
now so
summer,
that
yeah.
there won't be any glitches.
And part of what we're going to ensure in the very little, if any, concern at elementary grades. I think our biggest concern is going to be here at the middle school because you're testing each and every single grade. So I know we have plans in place with Joe Lakeview, our IT operations person, to make sure that we do some test runs early on so that we will go to the measured progress site where it's online and we'll ensure, okay, let's choose this coming Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Let's make sure that at least 300 kids are on the testing portal simultaneously. So we don't get into, oh my God, we don't have enough bandwidth, or there's glitchiness, or kids are getting kicked off and so on. So that ensure that on our level, things are up to snuff. But that's a great question.
Joan, has there been any more discussion of adding the history and civics piece?
Yes.
To, and was it deferred?
Yeah,
Later graduation requirements as well,
the-
sometime in the future?
the Commissioner of Education very strongly wants to add a history and civics MCAS at the high school level to determine the CD or the competency determination. However, I think what has kept that stymied for many years has been just budget and having the money and so on. But the game plan is to add that, but they do not have imminent plans right now.
Question about the adding history to the MCAS at the high school.
Mhm.
How would that work considering many students are taking like various history levels, like mine are taking world history, some are taking AP European history versus AP US history.
Great.
So like how would that be like a uniform type of MCAS?
Well, the uniformity of it would be US history. And you would in all likelihood, Maria, you would have the flexibility of taking it perhaps at the end of your sophomore year or perhaps at the end of your junior year. Think about with science. You know, at Nipmuc, we've chosen a uniform test, biology, and that counts as your science graduation requirement, your science CD. You could also take chemistry. You could also take physics. You know, we don't have many students who do it and over time, but realize within the last 3-5 years, not every single kid at Nipmuc has taken the MCAS in bio. We've had a handful of kids that have taken it in chem or in physics. So you could do, but I think the strong feeling is that it would be a US history and civics type test. And the target would probably be towards the end of the junior year, where most kids have completed 2 years of US history. Okay. All right, and last but not least, you do have in your packet the year-to-date expenditure report for the FY17 budget. Do you have any lines that you want to highlight,
No,
particularly now that we're in the joys of snow season?
yeah, well, we're where we should be, but we've got lots of money in our snow lines right now, but every time I see snow, I see money floating out of the sky at the same time. Should say floating up into the sky at the same time. But no, I think we're in good shape right now, so I'll let you know at the end of February or March. We still feel the same way.
Okay.
I mean, any questions?
The recent 9C cuts didn't have a direct impact on our budget this time around.
Not on anything for us. I mean, the only wild card that's always out there is regional transportation reimbursement. It wasn't part of the cuts, but you never really know what you're getting there until you get their last payment in June.
Sure.
So we could always go up or down in June because they decide, oh gee, we ran out of money or we have some extra money. So that's the one that we always kind of hold our breath on.
Yeah, there are no direct cuts to pre-K through 12 education funding other than some hits to DESE and also hits to wraparound services.
Right.
Like, for example, the school breakfast program reimbursement took a major hit.
Yeah,
And a lot of urban districts like Worcester got hit hard with that.
yeah, some of those literacy programs, and also it was disheartening to see the, some of the money for the opiate crisis.
Correct.
Addressing the opiate crisis,
Correct.
which we've addressed here, you know, or heard a lot about in the past year. I found that extremely disheartening
Correct.
at this juncture, in any case, but bears watching.
Okay, that's all I've got, Madam Chair.
Okay, moving on to subcommittee updates. We have policy. In our first reading of the updated policy, GBEDC, gifts to and solicitations by staff. Did anybody have any issue with the reads or anything that you want to share?
At the last meeting, I believe before, at the last school committee meeting, we met at 6 o'clock. We reviewed, I guess, a more formalized procedure for accounts, gift accounts and school student activities accounts, and formalizing that procedure of how they're set up and who's handling the money and how it's appropriated and things like that. So that was in review, and along with that, the collection of funds through GoFundMe and some other sites like that to support school purchases is also discussed. And that's where the GBEBC is being updated a bit to focus on that more specifically.
It's just a little more explicit language, kind of with the onset of more donors choose or GoFundMe, those types of crowdsourcing websites. The thing about this specific policy, when push comes to shove, and this is probably a fairly dated but still very much relevant policy around gifts and solicitations that are done in either a specific school or in the district's name. And a lot of this comes with, the gift law that, was enacted, I want to say in 2009 or around that time. But I think there was a need for even more explicit language around the establishment of crowdsourcing websites, because we're seeing it more and more. And in some cases, principals weren't exactly cognizant of some of them popping up. And granted, I think in all cases, the intention was very positive. We've actually even had some crowdsourcing websites started by students, and their intention was really good. However, there wasn't proper authorization from the administration. So this just kind of closes that loophole, and it's a little more explicit about it.
So it basically just says the school principal has to approve it
Before it's posted online.
Can you give me an example of how it might be used for classroom purposes?
Okay, so we actually had one that was opened this year by an inclusion team, a regular educator and a special educator in the 4th grade at Memorial, who wanted to have, for all kids in the classroom, various sensory items to kind of address digital behavior and so on. So started a GoFundMe for, wasn't a dramatic amount, it was like a little over $300. So I think you get into a discussion of, okay, is this something that was budgeted in the fiscal year budget? Was it even requested? Is this something that we need for all kids? Is this something that is the teacher's pet project? Is it something that we should have for the entire 4th grade? So there's a whole lot of discussions.
Which is why you want to run it by the principal and kind of research.
And then we've seen other situations where things have been put out there where they're a little bit of a head scratcher, and you're saying, okay, why aren't we covering that? Like, okay, there's a fairly robust amount of community support. These are things that should be covered in the operational budget. So I think it's one of those situations where good judgment needs to be exercised, and there needs to be a conversation and so on. And again, in all of these crowdsourcing sites, I know the intention for putting them out there has been positive.
Obviously, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we'll revisit that.
For second reading and approval on January 9th.
Moving along to old business and MERS-D capital needs.
Okay, you have, this is a carryover of our discussion at last meeting, where we had a simple spreadsheet that had all of the capital needs listed. After that short discussion, I asked Jay and Ken to kind of put their heads together and to go through the list and prioritize by district and by school what were the most critical needs, and also, in addition to prioritizing, kind of putting a short descriptor of what is it about and why the degree of urgency. So I'll turn it over to you, Jay, to just kind of discuss generally what are the most critical needs, why are they the most critical needs, and moving forward, what would be a smart strategy?
All right. If you read through this entire document, you can kind of see I've sort of tried to break this up into what I consider major and minor projects. The minor projects are the kind of things that we try to address at the end of each fiscal year if we have funds available. The major projects are going to require additional funding that we don't have within our operational budget. You know, the real biggies, the ones that I put at the top of the priorities would be the roof at the high school. The carpeting at the high school and the middle school, I think, are both, you know, we've got classrooms that the carpet is just worn out and torn, you know, that to a point where people might start to trip over them. I mean, we're going to have to address some of these things. And although, yes, we can, you know, attack 1 or 2 rooms at a time, we can't do the entire 2 buildings. It's just too much. The athletic fields have some challenges at both schools. The wells, one of the issues with the athletic fields at the high school is the wells aren't deep enough, so they run dry whenever we have a drought. It happens pretty regularly, and it makes it difficult to keep them green. So that's something we need to address. This building here at MISCO, we've got some other challenges. The electrical service, that the main electric room has a service in there that was put in when the building was built. So you're talking fairly old at this point. And although it seems to work, and we're told that you might be able to get parts for it, we're afraid that if it ever actually got shut off, it may not ever come back on again. So that's something that we've looked at. And we've gotten quotes for a few of these things where you see a little more precise number. We've actually got a quote, like for that we did get an exact quote. The phone system, district-wide, we have a phone system that I guess at best I would say is just barely functioning in some places, and it's difficult to get repair stuff. We have looked into, we've actually gotten 1 quote from Comcast to replace the whole phone system. It would be more of a lease option than an actual upfront costing, but it would increase our phone costs from about $30,000 in our budget to about $90,000 in our budget. So that's kind of something that I'm thinking right now we're not really going to do, but we're going to have to address it at some point. Other than that, I mean, I'm not going to go through everything on this entire list. There's a lot here. The bottom line is a lot of the stuff we have is old. Parts are hard to get. And it's hard to keep them working. We do the best we can to keep trying to repair them and keep them operating. But at some point, we're going to have to make a major upgrade. The way I've broken this up, you know, there's approximately $5 million worth of what I consider fairly major projects. And you could take several approaches. You could go to the towns and say, look, we'd like to upgrade all the buildings. These are the list of things we think it's going to cost $5 million, $5.5 million, and request a debt exclusion to fund it, say to be paid off in 10 or 20 years, and do some, probably you would do 10 in that and not 20, and make a major investment then over a period of time. And the tax impact, the way that would work is you would only borrow money as you did the work, so it might be 2 or 3 years before you actually started assessing the whole amount. That's one approach. You could go piecemeal. You could say, look, we need to do a roof. Can we do something for a couple $1 million just to get a roof? I can't tell you what the best way to do it is. I guess I think it'd probably be easier to go once and say, look, we need X amount of dollars to make some major upgrades. But, you know, I guess that's really up to you guys how you'd want to strategize approaching it. The minor stuff that we try to attack at the end of every year, we're always going to continue to do that. At some point, we may not be able to, but we have been for the last few years. And, you know, as far as how this is prioritized, I can't tell you that absolutely, you know, as an example, the stage curtains in one auditorium are more important than the security system. We kind of put them in an order, but they all have their priorities in place. But there's a lot of stuff that, you know, one other example, and Ken can speak to this better than I can, the Freon that's in all the air conditioning units and the refrigerators. Apparently the EPA has changed the code, and starting in 2020, we won't be able to get it anymore. We're going to have to do something about that, because if we need Freon for any of the units after 2020, it really either means a new unit or some kind of retrofit, correct?
Yes, that's correct. They changed it to 410A, so you can't get the current Freon and the current compressors the Freon is not interchangeable. So it means a new compressor, new coils, everything on anything that runs on AC, refrigeration, freezers, AC units, everything.
Right.
Or they'll jack the price up of the Freon until it's exhausted.
So, I guess I would turn it back to you. I think we do need to come up with a strategy of how we're going to approach this. None of this is like we have to do something in the next 3 months. There's really nothing on this list that I'd put in that kind of category. The roof at the high school, I think the flat surfaces are a bigger issue than the shingled surfaces. And we've got we've had challenges there all along, but I can tell you, we just did the roof in this building 4 years ago, and we still have leaks in little places on various occasions. It just happens. That's why you shouldn't have flat roofs, but apparently we do, and we have them at all 4 buildings. I think the carpeting is a big issue. I really do. I think that especially at the high school, I mean, if you go in that auditorium, the carpet looks really worn out. It's tearing. There's classrooms that are even worse, but again, that's a lot of money. So, I don't know. Do you have any questions about any of this? Assuming you all went through all of these things on here. Certainly, I tried to give you a brief explanation of what it was, without getting too far.
Jay, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Seeing as a former school committee member and somebody who's lived in the community in the past, has there ever been a strategy where, and this definitely hasn't existed since the recession, but perhaps in better times, where the two communities committed to, okay, over a 7-year period, what we'll do is we'll commit that we'll put a certain amount aside expressly for the purposes of capital projects, so that some of these could be ticked off over that 5 to 7 year span without a debt exclusion?
No, not to my recollection. No, they did do, I think, a roof project, and it was probably this building, but I don't remember. It was before I even got on school committee, so it was quite some time ago. I think instead, at least, so I was in your seat back almost 20 years ago now, and we were more building high schools, renovating this building, building 2 elementary schools. So that was the approach, and it was obviously debt exclusions to do it. I don't know that the towns have the capital, the revenue coming in to set aside more than maybe $50,000 or $100,000. And I'm not even sure they could do that, which really doesn't take a bite out of these big things. So they would be, I would think they'd be looking to go outside the levy limit in order to fund some of these things. And the key is, can you do it so that it's not a huge hit, it's spread out over a period of time, but addresses issues and maybe offsets the fact that the debt on this building in Misco, the Nipmuc and Misco, is coming off this year, so the taxes are going to definitely drop by a reduction there. And Clough and Memorial's projects are done in 2024, so we're only 7 years away from having those buildings paid for as well. So when all that debt comes off, if we could, have something that's coming on that maybe takes up a piece of that in the next 5 to 7 years, we probably can skate through for a few years. But again, like I said, the biggies that I think probably need priority is almost, I would put the carpet at number 1 in my view. So, I mean, we could try to approach it piecemeal. The question is, do you want to try to approach it piecemeal, or do you want to go and just give them an entire list and say, look, here's how we want to attack this? And I would tell you, probably the multi-board is the first place to start with this, where you can have a forum of FinCom and selectmen so they can look at some of these things. We do have a situation coming up starting next year for 2 more years where we're going to get MSBA reimbursement for this project, but the debt is gone. So we're going to have about maybe $650,000 over the next 2 years, because for some reason it was staggered and we have 2 more years of reimbursement coming in. I would tell you the first thing we need to do is we need to put that aside for capital needs, because we could probably tackle a couple of things with that right off the bat that might knock a couple of the bigger items off of this. It is money that's coming in. It can be used for pretty much anything, but I guess because it was related to building construction in the first place, the smart move would be to address building needs again rather than, put it into the operational budget.
Agreed.
So that's an option for 18 and 19 that we might be able to say, okay, we have this money coming in. Let's get a quote to do Again, so the carpets, you're probably talking around $300,000 between the two buildings. Maybe we want to tackle one building at a time over a summer and try and get somebody in to just do them all and be done with it. The roof is a biggie. The roof, you're going to need to go to the towns for debt exclusion no matter what. And you can have to hire an architect and get schematic designs. I will try to find out if there's any MSBA funding that we can get to offset any of this. I haven't really looked into that yet. But that's another option to help offset some of the costs.
And the timeline on that, in all likelihood, Ken and Jay, is probably within the next 5 years,
Yes,
because we're at year 20 now, correct?
usually most roofs last 20 to 30 years,
Okay.
depending on the quality of the shingle that they install.
The flat parts are more of a challenge, like I said. The shingle part, we have shingles that blow off, but we can always put up a shingle or two.
Right.
But I think the shingles are actually, I don't think we have a lot of leaks
No.
on the slope side. The flat side at Nipmuc, we've had leaks for a long time and they're just getting worse. Go in the music room and you can almost watch it rain through the ceiling sometimes. So there's some challenges there. Maybe we want to look at just addressing that. And we can get quotes, but you really have to go out to bid on that. And you really, in order to do a roof correctly, I think you really have to get an architecture firm that can come in and really do an analysis of what's up there and give you a proposal that covers everything that it has to cover. Neither of us, I certainly don't have the expertise to put together a quote.
No.
And write an RFP. It's beyond our scope on our own. Carpets we can handle. Wells, we can call a well company and say, all right, what would it cost to dig that well down, 150 feet instead of the 12 feet that it is now.
Yeah, Ken, if you could address, I understand where we're coming from with regard to the carpets. Carpets don't keep me up at night, though.
Me either.
What is number 3 and number 4 on this list does keep me up at the night with regard to the septic system, leach field, and the well.
Yes, the well's an original 1960s well. We use over 3,000 gallons of water a day that gets pumped out to the leach field. It's not dissipating into the earth fast enough. So it gets pumped up to the leach field, but some of it returns back to the pumps. So we know it's not absorbing while it's up there. It's approximately 30 years old. And if you had a home with a 30-year-old leach field, it would not pass a Title V inspection. It's working harder than it should. And that's an easy $250,000. And then to do the track on top of it and the football field, if you choose that same location. We are surrounded by wetlands and we don't have a lot of good locations to relocate it, which means a little bit more expensive to relocate it in the same location, which is under the track and field, or push some of it out to the baseball field, which is a partial leach field there also. And the well is inside the building. So if I have to move the well outside, years ago, we talked about moving the well. The DEP wanted to put it outside the Zone 1 radius, which was way out in the back, which means an intermediate pumping station and more filtration and more pumps and more wiring. So relocating the well could be quite expensive, which means move it out of the boiler room and put it outside where it should be.
So Ken, maybe you can, maybe you cannot answer this question, but if you had to assess the degree of urgency, and particularly with something like the leach field, are we talking, wow, we're on borrowed time here? Are we talking about we can continue to sustain this for a period of X years? I mean, can you assess
Yeah, I
that?
would, shoot from the hip and say, I think we got a little bit of time left. We do have a few years. And like I said, it gets, all the gray water gets pumped out. Some of it returns. The pumps are working, more than they should.
Yeah.
But they're still working. It's still leaching. I don't think all the lines are at maximum capacity. I do think it's dwindling though, of course, by its age.
Right. I think part of this too with both of them is we probably need to hire an expert because we may need to look at not having a leaching system, but having one of those sewage treatment plant type things that purifies it and then puts it out into some stream somewhere so that we can locate a well and not have to worry about that radius as much. But again, it requires expertise that we don't have internally. This area does not perk well. We went through it out front when we had to put in that leach field for the filtration system for the water a couple of years ago, where we ended up putting, that's why we have Misco Hill in the front of the building now. It's kind of a raised system because it just doesn't drain well. This whole area, if you talk to any of the neighbors around here, it does not perk well in this area. And whether we can even get a perk that passes, based on today's standards, it's hard to say. We probably can, but how much more are we going to build stuff up? So I think all of that would require probably bringing in, I don't know if it's an architect or an engineer of some kind that hopefully actually knows what they're doing, that can give us some advice on that. And it's something else that I actually worry less about the leach field and the septic system. They're working, so.
Okay.
But famous last words. Yeah.
If you wanted to treat the sewage, you'd need like a flowing river of high volume and velocity to treat it and discharge it into it, which we don't have.
Right. I mean, we have this pond over here.
That's not flowing
it's
enough.
not
It would
flowing.
need to be
Um,
a big river.
So we have some challenges there that is something else that we probably need to bring in engineers to give us some advice on.
Okay.
And that may be the first step, is we need to look at appropriating some money to get some expert advice on a couple of these, and at least that one, somebody to come and take a look at it. I mean, there are some local engineers that are really experts in leach fields that we could probably bring in for relatively, less than what we might have to spend for some, big firm. There's a couple of people I know in Mendon that are just total experts in this kind of stuff, but they're also at the point where they may not want to do the work anymore because they've retired from their jobs. So we might be able to enlist them. So that might be an option as well. So I don't understand, carpets don't keep you up at night?
They do not.
Wow.
I think
Anything
carpets
that's
are
going to shut the
important.
buildings down, I think, is a
Exactly.
bigger concern.
I don't
Something that's
know
going to
of
stop us
many,
from bringing kids into the school.
Many schools that have been shut down because, their carpets are
Failure.
shoddy.
So, yeah, I mean, so this building is really the most in need then, when you get down to it, because we have the well, we got the leach field, we've got the electrical service. All those things are major issues that we probably need to look at some point. Like I said, we do have one quote for the electrical service, and the people doing the electrical work for the solar canopies have told us that they think it could be done for a lot less, and we're waiting to get a quote from them as well, just to see what they're really talking about. They did have the whole thing open, so they did see the inside and they know what's there. But they haven't been too quick on actually giving us some real numbers.
So I think the multi-board is a good next step, bringing this list to the multi-board and having selectmen's and FinComs from both towns take a look at it. And I mean, I agree with you, anything that's gonna shut down a school.
Yeah.
Is probably something we need to address.
I think we've been, and I don't think Mendon-Upton is unique versus other districts. I think when you're going through challenging times and education funding is challenging in general, you're looking to get by every single year. And what's the first thing that you put off? It's usually your capital needs. And I think this first step is really important about us being very explicit about what our capital needs are. And there really isn't anything here that is, gee, wouldn't that be nice if we had that? This is very explicit in these are critical needs that we need to address at various points in the near future. So I think being explicit with it, with our selectmen and our FinComs, and also with the community at large, I think is critically important.
But I think also we need to look at some of those external, basically, current bond funds that are out there for the schools and other major capital projects, understanding the timelines around them and the pieces and what's freeing up. How do we leverage some of that back into the school on the continuous basis of improving the capital basis that's here? I don't think we're talking about it all, but at the same point, we should be making sure that there's definite plans towards the reallocation of some of those items that are freeing up to basically do that. Taking some of those other components that you're talking about, where we're freeing up, where we're getting certain funding in for, I'll call it, matching federal funds and things like that, which you mentioned. We should definitely be looking at how do we allocate that against some of the higher priority needs on this list.
Right.
Because that's already there, and those are pieces of funds that will be there. I mean, it's not folding that back in the operational budget doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's there for one-time needs, and we should be using it for those one-time critical capital needs. Right.
I mean, one of the challenges from the town's perspective is they only really have two ways to raise money. One is within the levy limit, which means it can be used for anything. It can't really be earmarked, even though a town could choose to earmark it, or debt exclusions, which are very specific for borrowing for a specific project at a fixed dollar amount. It would be nice if both towns could say, we're gonna, outside the levy limit, assess, X amount of dollars each year to address capital needs throughout the town, not just the schools. But they don't really have the ability to do that I'm aware of. They're really locked into either operational or debt. And the debt, if you do it on the debt side, it has to be, we approved X amount of dollars to fix the roof. And it kind of ties our hands a little bit.
But I think with this list now, we can go back in the multi-board and we can have a more strategic discussion around how we plan for different things based on timing and opportunity and what would be there.
And at the same time, maybe we need to ask the towns, have they looked at their own capital needs? Because I know Mendon's looking at all of theirs. I'm pretty sure Upton's looking at the same
Upton
thing.
has a
They've got
capital plan.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
there's plenty of, both towns have plenty of things they need.
Yep.
And then it's going to be a matter of prioritizing within the town as opposed to the school, which do taxpayers feel is the most important if you're going to taxpayers.
Just a point, Upton also has a capital budget committee. So when things, not only multi-board, but also the capital budget committee would also.
That's how.
Yeah. So I think that's our next step, multi-board.
Which folds into the next agenda item, Madam Chair. We had originally a November meeting, which got rescheduled to December 15th, but then the Upton Selectmen requested that because December was kind of a crazy busy month, that we reschedule that to January. So seeing that we are now the official keepers of the multi-board, I'd like to be able to propose the rescheduling of that meeting. How would January 19th, which is a Thursday evening, which is the general evening that we've had that, how would that work for the committee?
Works for me.
Is that reasonable? So we'll tentatively plan 7 o'clock on the 19th at the PDC.
Sounds good.
That would work.
Okay. Super.
Okay, moving right along to new business, spotlight on teaching and learning and inclusion professional development.
Okay, so one of our major goals, as it has been over the last 3 years, has been to do further work in inclusion practices across the district. And I think we've made some significant progress in that. And part of that progress has been some of the PD that we've done, both with teachers and with paraprofessionals. So I asked Dennis Todd to come here this evening to talk a little bit and highlight some of the work that's been going on. So I'll turn it to you, Dennis.
Thank you. So it's not as exciting as leaching fields and flowing rivers.
It's more exciting.
Yeah. Actually showed Maureen this presentation today. She said, well, it looks pretty good, but you could add a little color to it. So I did add some color. The headers have the holiday green touch to it. Like Joe said, we've got some great things going on in the district, and one of them is our co-teaching and inclusive practices. It's been going on since about 2014, and it's been collaborating with consultants Donna Simone and Judy Garvey, and a new person to the team is Mary Maher. And these ladies are fantastic, and all the teachers just love working with them. They find them so positive and full of great energy they bring into the program. And it's actually interesting. Donna Simone has come full circle. She was one of our first special education teachers here in the district, and now she's consulting with us. So she's happy to be here. So co-teaching, what is it? Obviously, by its name, it's an instructional approach in which classroom teachers and special education teachers share responsibility for planning and delivering and evaluating instruction for a group of students, some of which have exceptional needs. So the key piece there is that evaluating instruction, it's a collaborative approach where the teachers, special ed teacher and general ed teacher have an opportunity to plan the instruction, deliver it, and then think about what worked, what worked, what didn't work, what improvements can they make. So, and then why do they do it? There's research that suggests that students with disabilities who spend more time with their typically developing peers outperform similar students who are in less integrated settings on measures of numerous social, academic, and post-school success. So this is from that HARE report of 2012, a really comprehensive report on special education. So that's a little background information on co-teaching. So our co-teaching status, this was very purposefully implemented, and it started out in 2014, like I said, at Clough and Memorial, and predominantly with grades 3 and 4 at the time. So they've been doing it for 3 years, and they've been, for the past 3 years, forming successful co-teaching partnerships. And at this point, they have co-teaching mentors who are actually working with the new co-teaching teams. There's 3 mentors at Memorial and 2 at Clough. And Judy and Donna and Mary are watching over these guys, providing some co-teaching consultation services with them. This goes in its 2nd year. Currently, our 15 co-teaching teams in place. It's mostly for kids with ELA and math support across all the grade levels, 5 through 8. And NIPA is in its first formal year. They've been doing it for a little bit informally, but they're in their first year working with the consultants. They provided initial professional development to approximately 9 teams at the end of last year. And then they're starting their first in-class coaching sessions within this month. So they're excited to get started. So what does the PD look like? So MISCO and Nipmuc obviously looks different than Memorial and Clough because they've been doing it for a little bit. So what happens is the consultants come in and they provide 2 half-day sessions of co-teaching. Kind of your standard professional development, and they review the models of co-teaching, and I have them listed there. And a little, I can actually already put in that little diagram, so it's very helpful. So there's 6 official types of models for co-teaching. That's station teaching, which is in the middle there. You see a lot of it at the elementary level, where the kids are broken up into small groups of 5 or 6 kids. And they're working on different elements of the lesson plan, going through different groups with either a special education teacher or a general education teacher. What's nice about that, when you go to observe those classrooms, you can't tell who is, has an individualized education plan and who doesn't. So it's really great. And then for kids that need a little more extra support, you see a lot of that alternative teaching where one teacher has a group of kids, 10 or 12 kids, and then the second teacher has 3 or 4 kids that are really doing some specialized instruction in the smaller group setting. And then also part of the PD, Donna and Judy, they concentrate on these 3 C's, which is communication, collaboration, and classroom culture. So that's kind of the soft skills of the whole co-teaching process. And if being partners in the classroom is key, right? So you got to be able to communicate and collaborate effectively. And then they also do 3 days of in-class coaching. So what that looks like is that the consultants will come and observe what's happening in the classroom in the morning. So they'll go around all the different team teachers, the teaching teams, and observe what's happening. And then they have a debriefing session in the afternoon where they'll meet with the partners, the teams, and just talk about what great things they're seeing and moving for improvement, etc. And then over at Memorial and Clough, since they've been doing it for 3 years, the consultants do ongoing work with them more on a consultant basis. And what's nice is that Memorial and Clough have been doing it so long and they're so into it. It's really such a positive thing at schools that they get together voluntarily on usually like the last Friday morning of each month before school starts, and they just talk about what's going great in the classrooms. And I've been to these meetings, and I tell you, they're always the best meetings of my week. It's so positive, and they're really pleased with what's going on in their classrooms. They just love sharing what's working in their classrooms. So that kind of sprung up organically over the past couple of years. And then, obviously, the co-teaching mentors provide coaching to the new teams at Memorial and Club schools, and that's been getting favorable reviews from what I've heard. And then, what's new this year that we're really excited about is we're offering really directed professional development to our paraeducators. And in the past, paraeducators, part of their agreement is that they don't necessarily have to attend the professional development days. So we've made a concerted effort in offering professional development to the paraeducators and encouraging them to come, and many of them are taking advantage of it. Maureen was able to have Karen Martin offer 2 days actually during the school day, right? Not on a professional development day this past November. Talk about growth mindset and language and feedback to students and the overview of the models of the co-teaching. And, they had some exit tickets after the PD to talk about, what they learned, and there's a lot of positive responses from the paraeducators. They feel very valued to be part of the learning process, so that was great. And then for the January and March, the half day in January and full day in March, Dr. Dina Triniello is an expert in inclusive practices. She'll be providing PD to our paraeducators on the topics there, the roles and responsibilities in the inclusive classroom for a paraeducator, facilitating student independence and self-management strategies for success in churches. So, really looking forward to that this year and into the next year as well. And then lastly, some next steps. So, Jay, you know this, but I'm sure you'd be happy to know that all our co-teaching and inclusive practices, professional development has been supported by the 274 Special Education Program Improvement Grant that I write annually. I'll continue to write that grant and earmark it for professional development in this area. I hope to continue our partnership with our consultant group. They're very pleased to be working with us here in the district. They've seen some great things happen over the past three years, and I know that they're very dedicated to what we're trying to achieve here. And I also think that do a data dig or data analysis to see the impact on the student achievement that the co-teaching has offered to all our students, not necessarily the kids, special education kids. But when you have a second adult in that classroom, it's benefiting everybody. And then I think it's also important, and I'm sure that the consultants would love to come and present at the end of the year here to this school committee, talk about all the accomplishments they've done this past year. They love to talk about their craft, so I'd be happy to see if I can organize that for you guys.
I think Donna would be outstanding.
Yeah.
And just a little kudos to Mendon-Upton. Other school districts are coming in to observe the co-teaching model that the elementary school systems have implemented, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, great. And we've got some partnerships. So some of the PD that Donna will offer, like say she's getting ready to do some the PD for the high school, she'll put it out to some of the programs that she works with. So some of the other school districts. So it's not uncommon to have teachers from Avon and Westboro, Northboro, Southboro come in to some of the PD. So it's we're all kind of one big happy co-teaching family, because I think they've seen each other enough now in the different districts that they're communicating outside, through email and how things are going, etc. So it's been great.
And I'd say hats off to both of you, particularly this year, pulling our paraprofessionals into the fold. I think far too often they're kind of forgotten, and you forget about the real significant role that they play with kids and how well they know our kids and how important they are to our team. So seeing, some real quality PD and some real quality time with these key ideas with our paras, I think is huge.
One thing that always has stayed with me from Donna and Judy when I've gone to their trainings is that they have this philosophy of like all hands on deck. So all adults that are in a classroom, it's all hands on deck for helping and working. So the more tools that you give them, and that's what we get to see in the paraprofessional trainings that we have, is we're just giving more, all of our staff the tools they need. And just today, that picture was today, I'm seeing tons of station work rotating through. I probably should have done the 5 stations that you could see, but you had different adults working with students individually on specific skills, other, pair work, using some of the iPads to do some practice. In this case, it was with IXL, but it's pretty neat to see it in action now that they have gone through the training the last couple of years.
So when you're doing the inclusion model, so you've got a class of 20 students, when you're kind of changing the models around, does it speak to not necessarily, special needs, but more so different strengths and weaknesses of individual child?
Absolutely.
So like if my child is struggling in math, they might be drawn out for a station to be working in a smaller group to help make sure that they are understanding the concepts.
Yeah, so today, for example, in the class I was in, on the other side of the room, the general education teacher had about 5 students. They were going over some of the Go Math problems, but that group, because I heard her say it, I saw that you struggled on this one problem, so we're gonna go through it together and kind of figure out, what happened. So it was any of the students that needed help in that one problem. And then there was a paraeducator with another group over here. And so it allows them to shift and meet the needs of all the students in the class in different ways. We see station teaching a lot, but you can have the parallel teaching where they're teaching the same thing, but because you have 2 adults, now the student-teacher ratio has now just dropped, and then they can answer questions and have more frequent checks of understanding of that. So, and sometimes you may have a mix of the team teaching where, they're interacting and they're both doing the same thing and moving around. So it's kind of neat to see the different types in action.
In station teaching, the kids move through the station.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're not-
And you could change your model at any given moment depending on what the needs are.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great work. Okay, do we have any correspondence?
No, we do not.
Okay. Any other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours? No? Okay, so future agenda items include the MERSD Makerspace pilot on January 9th, the MERSD FY 2018 first pass budget on the 23rd of January, as well as our district action plan progress on January 23rd too. All right. Without any further ado, we will adjourn on it. Oh, I need a motion to adjourn, sorry.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned at 8:09.
Nice job.
I know, not bad. Look at that time on the agenda.
Yeah.